Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Today, we have an unusual thing. It happens every so often. It doesn't happen as often as I would like. It certainly doesn't happen as often as I think you would like. It doesn't happen often enough. I'm just checking to make sure my sound is working here. It doesn't happen often enough for democracy to thrive and for the village idiot Donald Trump to be checked. But it does happen sometimes. And that's that the Supreme Court makes decisions that are actually correct. This extremist, not just right-leaning, but right-wing Supreme Court that doesn't care about precedent, majority that seems to frequently feel that it owes the village idiot Donald Trump something. Majority that has a functioning, semi-functioning white nationalist on it. That's Justice Alito, a hateful man in Justice Clarence Thomas, who is as corrupt as the day is long. And like I said, a conservative majority that most of the time will go along with Donald Trump no matter what. But once in a while, their conscience, their legal clarity, their common sense, once in a while, it gets the best of. Alito and Clarence Thomas are just beyond help. They are so far now to the right, and so politically motivated that there's pretty much no hope to ever consider that they will come out on the right side of any decision, because it's just ideological now. They are not justices anymore; they're politicians. But for the rest of the right-leaning court, and right-leaning is a bit of an understatement, I think. But for the rest of that court, it is once in a while they get it right. And we had 3 cases today where they got it right. One case that I think is, I don't know. I don't think it's catastrophic. Assuming we never have a president like Donald Trump again. But there's 2 cases that are related, and I don't know. We'll just get into it. Let me open up the chats first, and then we'll talk about it. And then if we have time, we'll get into the latest with Iran. Okay, let's see what's happening here. Twitch. Let's get you guys opened up. Let's open up the channel. Okay, Twitch is in the building, and YouTube. Are we working today? Yes, so let's get YouTube opened up. And let's not have double sound problems that I so frequently find myself creating. And let's get Substack humming here that I so frequently find myself. Okay, we got everybody here. Welcome, everybody. And guys, there's always, it's always a work in progress for me to get more efficient and better at this effort. So I have, and I'm always learning as I go. I've noticed on my recordings that I think I'm generally too close to the microphone, because I kind of go like this, or I kind of have the mic sort of up like this, and I noticed that when I'm editing these videos after the recordings, it just doesn't sound right. So I'm trying to find that sweet spot. So so I'm going to consciously try to be like here. I guess I don't know, that far away. I guess that's about 6 inches. But whoever they are, they say that I should be 6 inches. We put these arms up because they're a pain in the ass. So if you can't hear me, let me know. or if it sounds too low because I'm trying to work it out. I don't know. Anyway, let's switch scenes and let's get to the news, shall we, my friends? All right. So let's talk about I think the easiest out of the case. I mean, all of the cases should have been easy for the Supreme Court, but I think the easiest case for the court was the E. Jean Carroll verdict, right? It was to decide if, and this is a case, the Supreme Court should have never accepted this case in the first place. The fact that they accepted this case is indicative of how disgraceful and how ideologically motivated this far-right Supreme Court is. E. Jean Carroll was raped by Donald Trump many, many years ago, right? That's without question. A New York State judge said that in the civil case, one of the cases about that involved E. Jean Carroll's lawsuits against the village idiot Donald Trump said that New York State law, only by law in New York State, something can only be called rape if there is penetration. Not to get too graphic, thinking about Donald Trump raping somebody, or anybody raping somebody, but that's the law. That doesn't mean that there aren't other crimes that could be prosecuted criminally and civilly that would be sexual assault. But based on, and I never knew this before the E. Jean Carroll case, but based on New York State's consideration of the legal definition of rape, there has to be penetration. But the judge also said, when he ruled, on this civil case, that Trump raped her. He used the word. So it can't legally, by New York State law, call it rape, but by anybody's common sense definition, what Donald Trump did to E. Jean Carroll in, I can't remember the name of the department store right now, but what he did to E. Jean Carroll constituted, in a dressing room in Bergdorf, I think it was Bergdorf Goodman in New York City, constitutes rape. And if you remember, George Stephanopoulos of ABC News basically said exactly what I'm saying. The Village Idiots sued ABC News. I don't remember what it was, 22 million or a bill. I don't remember, but I remember ABC News, instead of fighting, which they should have done, they should have done what the Iranians have done. They should have done what the Chinese have done. They should have done what the Canadians and the Mexicans have all done. Instead of doing that, they cowardly settled with the Village Idiot. I don't know that Disney owns ABC. I don't know that they're in the settling mood again, personally giving the Village Idiot millions and millions of dollars in cash, especially with lawsuits that they would win. But irrespective, this was the easiest case for the Supreme Court, in my humble opinion, as humble as that may not be. All they had to do was look at the facts from the lower courts, look at the appeals, and just determine, like all the rest of us have, that Donald Trump is a rapist who rapes, or who raped. May not be doing that anymore. But he was a rapist who raped. And it was clear that not only did he rape E. Jean Carroll, then he defamed her character. And she proved it, right? She proved it, right? So, so that was in essence in the case. And there is two cases pending, right? One is for $5 million that the idiot has to pay E. Jean Carroll. And the other one is for, and we'll I'll fact check myself in a minute when we go through the article itself. Another one is for like $88 million, or something along that line, that the idiot has to pay E. Jean Carroll. Well, the $88 million one is still in the appeals process. So that's not done, right? And I expect he'll lose that too, if it makes its way to the Supreme Court, if it can, if the Supreme Court is ignorant, dumb enough, ideological enough, and political enough to accept another stupid fucking case. Because remember, this happened before the idiot was president. So there's no excuse, there's no reason why the Supreme Court should accept this case, should have accepted this case. But it's done. The $5 million case is done. The idiot has to pay E. Jean Carroll $5 million of his money. Now, maybe there's sycophantic whack job creep donors who will pay it for him. We'll see. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody, some billionaire or millionaire wants to get on Trump's good side, or wants to get a cover, somebody has a company and they want to get a government contract. They just give Trump the money for this, right? And they just pay it. Like, what the fuck? I mean, you're not allowed to give somebody just like a $5 million gift, but because you without paying taxes on it. But Trump controls the Department of Justice, so whoever did it would never get investigated for it anyway. Right now, and the IRS would never flag it. But irrespective, so whether or not Trump has somebody else pay it for him, or he just breaks the law and just doesn't pay it, he's like, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if this $5 million that E. Jean Carroll is owed, he just doesn't pay her. What are you gonna do to me? What are you gonna do? You're gonna put me in jail, E. Jean? You're never gonna get me. I'm the president of the United States, and I can do what I want. They'll never be able to put me in jail, E. Jean. E. Jean, I call her E. Jean, right? So I don't know if she'll ever get paid. And I don't know if at least until he's out of office. I mean, then the Department of Justice, I suppose, can go after him. I guess they could freeze his assets, or the state of New York could freeze his assets and just, take $5 million from him in assets. I think that would be possible. But I don't know. But the bottom line is he's lost it, and that's a good thing. The Supreme Court said no, and that's a good thing. So let's read some of the details about it. I'm switching over. I usually don't do like a like a full shot. I'm trying new things. It's a little, this is always a work in progress. So I'm trying new, trying to do like when I read the articles, I'm going to do a full screen view without me in it. So, Patty Ann, can SCOTUS give a deadline to pay? That's a really good question. But I don't know. And they're not going, I mean, I read, I think 3/4 of this argument. This article, I didn't see anything about that. And I suppose SCOTUS could do whatever the hell they want, but they're not going to, right? I mean, he's just not going to pay. I don't know if he doesn't pay, what the process is. I mean, the Department of Justice would have to enforce it, I would assume. Well, no, I mean, it's a state ruling, right? The state of New York would have. It's not a federal ruling, so the state of New York would have to go through the process of doing whatever they do when somebody loses a lawsuit and they don't pay, which is freezing their assets. So I don't know. It's a good question, though. So anyway, the Supreme Court Monday handed the village idiot Donald Trump a loss by refusing to hear his attempt to overturn a jury's finding that he's sexually abused and later defamed writer E. Jean Carroll. Or maybe I had this wrong, though. So maybe they didn't. Maybe they just waited till now to decide to refuse to hear it. I actually thought that that there was an argument made, but maybe I'm wrong. And I apologize to the Supreme Court if I have them wrong, and I accuse them unjustly of not hearing this case. I think I am wrong. The case arose from a federal lawsuit. Okay, and I'm wrong again. This is why I have to fact check myself. This is a federal lawsuit, so it's not a state lawsuit. The case arose from a federal lawsuit filed by Carol in Manhattan alleging that Trump assaulted her in a dressing room of a department store in 1996. So first of all, if you're, let's just, before we get into it further, let me set the record straight because I fucked two things up here. One is I was incorrect. I was misinforming you. I was wrong, even though I read this article, but clearly didn't pay enough attention while I was reading it. The Supreme Court did not hear the case. It's not that they heard it and they shouldn't have. They according to this reporting here, they chose not to hear it. So that was the right thing. Secondly, I kept saying over and over that this was a federal case, a state case, and the state of New York would be the ones that would go after Trump's assets if he didn't pay E. Jean Carroll. But this is a federal lawsuit, so that's number two. So let's go back to the article, and we'll see what else I screwed up because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of it. The case arose from a federal lawsuit filed by Carol in Manhattan alleging that Trump assaulted her in the dressing room of a department store in 1996. The defamation claims relate to statements he made about her after his first term in office, in which he described her claims as a con job and a hoax. Carol first made her allegations in 2019 and filed the lawsuit 3 years later, in part under a New York State law aimed at assisting survivors of sexual assault from years ago. Trump, the village idiot, denied the allegations, with his lawyers noting that Carol never reported the incident to the police and that there were no witnesses. Trump's legal team said in a court filing that Carol waited until he was president to bring her claims so she could maximize political injury to him and profit for herself. Now, obviously, the stupidity of that argument is how could she have, if she didn't, immediately report the incident, right? And she didn't report it to police, which is some of what they argue, and she waited years to come forward, right? How could she have known that he was ever going to be president? I guess the argument they're making, well, she didn't make her allegation till 2019, but if they're arguing she was waiting for him to become president, how could she have known until at least 2016 that he would become president, right? After she was raped, and then subsequently years later, it was laughable. I mean, that Donald Trump would ever be president. Whoever knew America could be that dumb, right? So it just strikes me as a ridiculous argument that they lost anyway. I digress. Trump has denied the allegations with his lawyer, noting that Carol never reported the incident to police and that there were no witnesses. Trump's legal team said in a court filing that Carol waited until he was president to bring her claims so she could, quote, maximize political injury to him and profit for herself. I read that already. On appeal, the idiot Donald Trump had argued that Manhattan-based U.S. District Judge Lewis Kaplan should not have allowed testimony from other women, Jessica Leeds and Natasha Stoyanov, who had accused the idiot of sexual misconduct. The idiot also denied those allegations. The idiot's lawyers also said Kaplan should not have allowed jurors to view the infamous Access Hollywood tape in which Trump could be heard speaking disparagingly about women. That's an understatement. Trump's lawyers argued that, taken together, Kaplan's decisions to allow the evidence not directly tied to Carol's claims helped boost her case and cover up for the lack of direct evidence relating to her specific allegations. Carol's lawyers said in their own court papers that Kaplan correctly allowed the evidence to be admitted, as it speaks to Trump's alleged prior conduct and his propensity to take the kinds of actions she claimed in the lawsuit. And just to keep things interesting and so you don't just get bored by a wall of text, I figured I'd bring myself back up with the website. Why not? They also appointed Carol's lawyers. They also pointed out that the New York-based U.S. Second Circuit Court of Appeals, which upheld the jury verdict in 2024 ruling, found that the issues about which evidence should have been admitted at trial were not a determining factor in upholding the verdict. So it seems like it was a pretty easy lift for the Supreme Court, right? It seems like it would have been. I mean, this Supreme Court has often, really jumped through hoops to try to come up with illogical, logical, crazy shit to justify the village idiot Donald Trump's behavior and to give him a win. But they really would have had to. I mean, they would have had to argue, and they would have. Maybe for Amy Coney Barrett, that was just too much of a lift, and that's good. I think she was. Was it a 6-3? I thought it was a 5-4 on this. Does it say? We'll look that. Let me finish reading it, and I'll look that up in a minute. Let's see what the breakdown was. This I don't know. I think it was 5-4. But I could be wrong. Carol filed a separate defamation claim against Trump, not at issue at the Supreme Court, that led to an $83.3 million judgment. That case concerning statements the idiot made while serving his first term in office is still on appeal. Trump argues that the claim should be dismissed on the basis of presidential immunity. I think he loses that too. I wonder if that. I mean it. First of all, let me confirm something, because I'm coming from a place of ignorance here. I need to confirm if any of you guys know, just toss it in the chat. If that $80.3 million judgment, that was the big judgment, if that is coming from, I feel like it was a state court. It wasn't a federal lawsuit, but maybe it is, because it was statements that Trump made while in office about her, calling her a liar, defaming her character, that sort of thing. So maybe it was. And then if that's the case, I can't imagine if it makes it to the Supreme Court, that the court will handle it differently. Trump argues that the claims should be dismissed on the basis of presidential immunity. So basically saying that because that the Supreme Court decision that gives the idiot immunity to basically any crime that he commits while in office, right? As long as it's something that's not a private act, but it's something that he does as his job as president, then he's immune from prosecution. He can't be sued for it or anything else. I don't know how this is a personal matter that happened years ago, and then even though Trump said something about it while he was president, I can't. I mean, the Supreme Court would, not that they give a shit, but with the exception of Alito and Thomas, I can't imagine any of these other justices would want egg on their own face, because they were the one that came up with that immunity clause. They were the ones that argued, incessantly, that the president, this does not give the president a free ride. He can't just commit crimes. He can't just do what he wants, right? So I can't imagine that if that case, I don't know where that case is in the legal system, in the appeals process right now, but I can't imagine that it wouldn't run into a brick wall at the Supreme Court. But, with the Supreme Court, you never know. But let's just check the breakdown. What is the decision breakdown of the E. Jean Carroll case from SCOTUS? So Supreme Court, blah, 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 blah. The lower court, don't care about that. I just want to know the breakdown. Okay. How many, was it this is how we'll do it. Was it a 5-4 decision? It was a 5-4 decision. Okay. Agent Carroll sexual abuse and defamation case. Oh, it was not a 5-4 decision, but rather a brief, unexplained order where judges. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Beth, yeah. No, Beth, I was mistaken, Beth. I'm sorry. And I led you guys astray. I remember, if it was a no decision, that it's the same thing I screwed up in the beginning of the live today, I subsequently screwed up now in the middle of the live today, which was, it was no decision. It was just it just took the Supreme Court a long time to tell us that they're not going to take up the case. It just, so there was no decision. The Supreme Court, there's no order, there was no decision, there was no opinion. The Supreme Court just refused to hear the case, which is the end of it, by the way. That's the end of it. Unless, the Trump lawyers figure out some other angle to try to bring some other appeal to the Supreme Court. But I've never heard of that. Like, when it's over, it's over. Now, these creeps might try to figure something else out, but I want to say it's over. He has to pay her $5 million. Like, now. He's not going to, but he has to. And I hope, my true hope is that when he doesn't pay her, I was looking for, if you guys saw me do some weirdness there, I was looking for the arms on the chair that I put up. I got to get rid of it. I bought this chair like a little over a month ago. I needed a new chair. I was just sitting on like a ratty card table chair, and sometimes I'm here for hours, so it was pretty uncomfortable. But I'm too much of a cheap ass, and then I always pay the price for it. I'm too much of a cheapskate to buy like a real chair, because like a real chair is like $400 or $500, right? I mean, they go up to like $1,000, but a good ergonomic office chair is like a couple $100 or maybe even around $500. And I've never purchased a piece of furniture that is $500 that wasn't like for your living room, right? Or for your dining room. And it's just not in my mental construct to, if I was working at a company, I was an employee and I had a job and my employer was like, what chair do you want? I'd be like, oh my God, I need a serious ergonomic chair. I would be like, looking at reviews on Spruce and everywhere else, like the best chair and, $750. I would have no problem telling my boss, yeah, I give you guys all these hours a day. It would be, it would really be just awful for you not to consider my comfort levels and to spend I'm worth it. And I would believe it. Like, and I believe I'm worth it. But when it comes to my money, this one here, this is let's see if you can see it. It's a gaming chair, which I really don't need. It's a gaming chair, and I just wouldn't even buy a decent gaming chair. And but I got it at HomeSense. It was like a $400 chair, at least that's what the HomeSense said, and I got it for $200. And so I was like pretty happy about it. But I'm sitting it, and it's like it's pretty comfortable. Don't get me wrong; like it doesn't feel bad. It's comfortable enough to sit in. But one, it's like, if you can see, like I invested over these last few months in good lighting and like you haven't really seen it working all that effectively because I haven't had my curtains up, and I just got my curtains up and the room is dark now and the lighting is solid. Like it looks better now. And I have my teleprompter that I still don't really use as a teleprompter and all my equipment and shit now. And, I'm going to get an LED light for back here so I can up my game. It's going to look much nicer. And I'm going to put like, I'm not going to use TV trays. I'm like, you can't see what the hell, but I'm going to put plants because I'm into plants now. I'm going to make this really finally look like a nice sort of podcasting live space kind of thing. But this chair's too high, right? It takes away from like, I'm doing all this effort and we're probably going to repaint the wall a lighter color because I think the black it reflects the light too too ineffectively. So, and then we've repainted this. It's a dark blue, but it doesn't come out that well on video. So we're gonna repaint the wall. So I'm putting all this effort into it, but my freaking chair, it's just because it's a gaming chair. It's like it's too wide, it's too high. So I have to get rid of the gaming chair. I'm gonna return it maybe today or tomorrow before. I can't. My 30 days at HomeSense is up, or well, Home Goods. I got this one at Home Goods. Or was it HomeSense? No, this was Home Goods. And same thing, it's the same company. And then I'm gonna invest in one of those like $500 chairs. If you guys have one you like, tell me. But I'm gonna like just hold my nose and buy a really good chair. Not necessarily for comfort, just so my lives look good, even though I'm doing less lives. It's all about vanity. They probably will, Patty Ann, they probably will, whatever, to not have to make him accountable. Before I went into my chair tirade. Fair point. You're right. We'll see. Gail, I did, and it makes such a difference in your back. All right, Gail, I will take your advice for it. Thanks, Patty Ann. Gail, I was thinking about the branch. Okay, I should have brought this to your attention sooner, Gail, because I was looking at the branch chairs, and they look super comfortable, and they're like not too high, and they look pretty good. And Amazon, I like to get it from Amazon because it's easy to return it there. And I think Prime Day just wrapped up, and they had like 20% off the branch chairs. Only thing is, Gail, I'd like to ask. I'm sorry, guys, that I'm bothering you with all this, but I need to, because of the way I do stuff with the lives, and I talk with my hands and everything. And sometimes I need the arms like there, and sometimes I need to make them go away. So like I can move the arms up on this chair. On the branch chair, I think you can kind of like move the arms out. Ouch, I just hit my microphone. I think you can move the arms outward, can't you? Or you can move them down, right? So, let me know. Because I need arms that I can kind of get out of the way, but have when I need them. All right. I'm sorry, guys. I know I always say that I value your time, and, then I kind of, you can't move the arms. That's a deal breaker, Gail. And I really wanted to do it because, like, with a referral, that's always the best way, I think, to buy something. But I got to look for one that has arms that I can move out of the way. Oh, they do have, but they could have that style. All right, I'll check Branch then to see what they have. Maybe they have one with movable arms. I thought there was one Branch, but it could be a different brand where you move the arms out. Anyway, let's get back to the news here. So keep an eye out for. Hang on. I'm trying to change scenes to make my lives more interesting. So let's watch out for this. I'll keep an eye out for you. You have enough shit to pay attention to. But we'll keep an eye out for the $88 million one, because that's the one that's really going to hurt the idiot. That's the one he's going to feel, right? So let's see what happens with the appeals process with that, and let's see if that finds its way to SCOTUS. So that's decision one that was bad for the village idiot Donald Trump, right? And then let me see if I don't want to do the war stuff yet. Okay, so then there were 4 decisions, right, today, and there was 3 that were good and 1 that was bad. And the one that was bad is bad, but it's not like it's terrible because the president is Donald Trump. But if we never have a president like Donald Trump again, it will be okay, because it won't be this decision won't be abused. And it's a decision that the next president, it's a decision that will absolutely backfire on Republicans exponentially because they will not, because the next president is going to need to fire a lot of Trump extremists at every level of government immediately. And this decision will give them the opportunity to actually drain the swamp. There was no swamp before the idiot became president the second time. The idiot has literally created a swamp in the reflecting pool, and he figures like he literally is able to do it. And of course, he's figuratively created the swamp in Washington, D.C., that all his sycophantic MAGA worshipers are so hell-bent on getting rid of, right? And that swamp includes all of these incompetent political appointees at all levels of leadership in all federal agencies that the president is in control of. And the next president of the United States is going to have to be able to fire those people at will and immediately and right away and investigate those who committed crimes, right? Well, the president won't do that, but an independent Department of Justice will do that when we have a new president. But that being said, this ruling is still not great, but for that reality. So the Supreme Court backs Trump's bid to fire independent federal agency members. Now you're not seeing, if you're looking at the news right now and you're seeing like just the top line headlines about the Supreme Court decisions, you're seeing Trump's 3 losses. One of them very similar to this, but a different person in a different agency, a different department, and it's still a huge loss for the idiot. But let's cover the shitty part first. That's going to be good for the next president, but does give Donald Trump too much power right now, right? Let me just kind of read it to you. Supreme Court backs Trump's bid to fire independent federal agency members in a 6-3 ruling on Monday. The Supreme Court and Chief Justice penned the opinion on this one. The Supreme Court's GOP-appointed majority backed the idiot's power to fire members of independent federal agencies and overturned a 1935 precedent that had protected agency independence. So basically, this ruling overturns more precedent, which the Supreme Court does over and over again, and basically gives Trump the freedom to fire anyone he wants, except for the people in the Federal Reserve. And we're going to get to that in just a couple minutes. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote for the court that removal protections for Federal Trade Commission members violate the Constitution's separation of powers. So basically, if I understand that correctly, what they're saying is that protections in 1935 that were put in place to keep, in essence, keep certain agencies that exist in the executive branch independent, right? In other words, so they could hire, so they don't become political spaces like the Federal Trade Commission, right? The Department of Justice, right? To a lesser extent, our intelligence agencies, to a lesser extent, the Pentagon, because the president has had much more control over those departments long before Trump came around, right? Or won even his first presidency. But some of these other departments where this idiot has used executive authority to fire people that he really isn't allowed to fire. Well, he is allowed to fire them all now at will. And the independence of those agencies, just because they happen to be in the executive branch, doesn't exist. And what the Supreme Court reasoned, what Chief Justice Roberts and the 6 Republican conservative, right, Republican justices basically have reasoned in this opinion is that if the president doesn't have the power to fire basically anyone he wants, with one exception, in agencies that exist in the executive branch, then the separation of powers is not being honored. So therefore, even though Congress might have to approve, you might have a Senate-confirmed position in the executive branch, the president should be able to fire any of them, not just cabinet members, and he should be able to fire his cabinet members at any given time. They're direct employees of his, right? But everybody in every agency that exists under the executive branch, in essence, Justice Roberts said if Trump can't fire them, then you're fucking with the separation of powers. I don't understand that logic, because it's not like Congress can fire them. Like it's not like, um, you know what I mean? If you it's sharing the power. The president wants to fire them, gets an approval from Congress. Congress, in essence, gave the approval to have them. It's not a separation of powers issue. It's a common sense and independence of agencies issue. But that's not where Roberts sees this coming from. And I, in my opinion, truly think that Roberts did this to throw Trump a bone because he's scared of him. I think because there were three opinions today that didn't go Trump's way, and this, I guess, maybe for Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett and Justice Gorsuch, right, and Justice Kavanaugh, right? Well, Kavanaugh, I think, I don't know if Gorsuch or Kavanaugh was with Alito and Clarence Thomas, whichever ones. Yeah, no, they were all the conservatives were in the majority on this. It's only the liberal justices were in the minority. So I think all of those conservative justices are afraid of Trump. And this was all right, Mr. President, we're really sorry that we ruled against you and all these other three opinions, but we at least we gave you this, right? And we gave you so many other wins, Mr. President, so please don't say mean things about us. I mean, that could be fake news. That could be rampant speculation. That's just my opinion on the matter. So it's not based on anything but the way I feel about all of this and the way I feel that these people behave. So, that you want to take it with a grain of salt, because it's strictly an semi-informed opinion. So anyway, let's get back to this story. The ruling stemmed from the idiot's attempt to fire Rebecca Slaughter, a Democratic member of the Federal Trade Commission, without cause. The ruling carries implications for many other agencies across the government. The case questioned the vitality of a 1935 Humphreys executor precedent, which long protected agency independence and which the administration urged the justices to overturn. While doubting whether there had been anything left of the precedent at this point, I would disagree. I think there was. Just because Trump ignored the precedent and fired everyone, it doesn't mean that the precedent is gone, Justice Roberts, and you're a coward for coming up with it that way. This is why I believe you're a coward. This is why I believe you didn't rule on ideology or even on logic. You ruled on fear. Because if Trump is the guy that came and just defiled the precedent, if he just came and shit all over the precedent that's been around since 1935 and then wiped his behind with it, right? That doesn't mean it all but doesn't exist, because it would exist if you had the courage to uphold it, but you didn't, and you're a coward, and you'll always be remembered. Justice Roberts, your court will always be remembered and only be remembered. Your historical legacy, Justice Roberts, will be kissing Donald Trump's ass in his second term. Even the decisions that are made against Trump, it's irrelevant, because you'll be remembered before Trump's term. You'll be remembered of overturning Roe v. Wade, and then you'll be remembered for everything you've done in this term. And I should reiterate that you'll be remembered for only the things that you've done in this term, like this, which was predominantly kiss Trump's ass. You will be remembered as Trump's ass kissing Chief Justice. Congratulations. Anyway, the Slaughter case also raised questions about Trump's power to fire members of the Federal Reserve. Now, this was a separate ruling that came out. This had to deal with Lisa Cook, and this was a ruling that came out that said, no, Donald, you cannot fire Lisa Cook because the Federal Reserve does have independence. sort of. The Slaughter case also raised questions about Trump's power to fire members of the Federal Reserve, which was at issue in a separate Supreme Court appeal this term involving Lisa Cook. While broadly backing Trump's firing power over other agencies, the court had been strongly signaling it would grant greater protections to the central bank's independence. In a separate ruling on Monday, the court rejected Trump's emergency application to fire Cook. Trump said that he had cause to remove her, citing an unproven mortgage fraud claim. That was where the idiot Bill Pulte, who is now the Village Idiots acting director of national intelligence, before that sycophantic halfwit was placed into this position by the Village Idiot Donald Trump. He was in charge of the fair housing or whatever, whatever agency it is that has Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and it's like a $88 billion agency that Pulte was completely, unqualified to, not as unqualified as he is now to be the DNI director, the acting DNI director, but he was just a moron in that position too. And while Pulte was there, he didn't do anything actually to help, to benefit the agency or any of the agency work. He was hell-bent on finding people for Donald Trump to prosecute Donald Trump's political enemies. And he made up, he found and he made up mortgage fraud claims for Letitia James, for James Comey, for Lisa Cook, for Adam Schiff, right? That's what he was busy with. So that's what this is in reference to. So there was a trumped up charge, excuse the pun, that the Village Idiot had, that Bill Pulte recommended to the Department of Justice, that Lisa Cook had engaged in mortgage fraud, which ironically is one of the crimes that Donald Trump has committed over and over and over again all his life. The fact that he overvalues his properties so that he could get bigger loans from banks, which is illegal, and he undervalues his properties so that he could get tax breaks from the IRS and from the state of New York, which is illegal, right? Though he actually committed mortgage fraud over and over again, but that's another story for another day. So in this particular in that particular case, with the trumped up mortgage fraud and Trump saying he could just remove Lisa Cook, the Supreme Court said, no, you can't remove Lisa Cook. And I guess, we'll continue reading the article. I guess it's to maintain the independence of the Federal Reserve. I don't know. Trump said he had cause to remove her, blah, blah, blah. At heart of the dispute was the Federal Reserve Act's provision that presidents can remove governors, quote, for cause, a term that isn't defined in law. When he argued to the justices on the idiot's behalf, U.S. Solicitor General John Sawyer conceded that the president can't remove Cook over a policy disagreement, but he insisted that the president can remove her over the unproven fraud claim, and that courts can't even review Trump's rationale for wanting to remove her. At the January hearing, Trump appointee Brett Kavanaugh said that if there's no process or judicial review required, quote, that would weaken, if not shatter, the independence of the Federal Reserve. So thank you, Kavanaugh, in a sober moment. Kavanaugh and the court's 3 Democratic appointees joined Roberts' opinion in the Cook case on Monday. Roberts wrote that Congress limited the president's power to remove Federal Reserve governors for good reason, and that any change in that arrangement must come from Congress, not the courts. He wrote that accepting the government's position, quote, would allow the president to remove a member of the Federal Reserve at any time for any reason, without any notice before and without any judicial check after. That would turn for cause protection into little more than at-will employment. And, if you remember Trump, the Village Idiot's ongoing war with Jerome Powell, because Jerome Powell wouldn't lower interest rates, ironically, this jackass, what's his name, Wren? I can't think of his first name, that Trump appointed that was confirmed by the Senate, that's in charge of the Federal Reserve, isn't lowering interest rates either. He's made that clear. He can't lower them because inflation is so high right now. But the whole thing about Jerome Powell, the criminal investigation into Powell, the trumped up nonsensical criminal investigation into Powell, Trump fighting with Powell, Trump threatening to fire Powell, which he obviously didn't do because this case would be about Powell right now and Lisa Cook. All of that's irrelevant because now that Trump's, buffoon is in there, Trump is like, hey, he's going to do what he wants. If he's not going to raise rates, it's okay. It's okay. You spent almost 2 years threatening Jerome Powell, calling him an idiot, calling him every name you could possibly think of, having your Department of Justice criminally investigate him, threatening to fire him over and over again. And now the same thing, when your guy does it, it's like, nothing. And the media and again, the media is so pathetic. Just let them get away with it. It's not a story. It's not a story. Just irrelevant. Anyway, those are the two cases. Let me just get to the third case here. I didn't bring this up in preparation. This is the mail-in ballot case. Now, this case I have some thoughts about this case. It's a tremendous victory on the one hand. It's hard to even call it a tremendous victory. It's a tremendous victory. It's fantastic. It's the greatest victory we've ever. Because it's not like so many things are just about hoping and praying that the Supreme Court will remain intact. Just normal democratic things that have been intact for really long time, right? So the victory is partially from the fact that everything's going to just be okay, at least in this one area, in this one small version of this one area for this coming election, right? Like that's why I struggle with it being like, actually, I got to do my main horizontal again. Hang on. There's my main horizontal. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain hollowness to the victory because the victory is it's just getting back to normal, right? It's just getting back to sustaining one obvious thing, right? That was never controversial until now. Yes, Republicans before Donald Trump made up these lies about illegal immigrants voting, right? But it never rose to the point where where they actually challenged the outcome of elections, where presidential election was challenged, where it never evolved into the absurdity where you now have an idiot that's been elected twice, claims that he won a time that he didn't win, and we have the Department of Justice, the FBI, and now very likely the Office of the Director of National Intelligence involved in trying to prove that the idiot won an election that he lost in 2020, right? So just getting back to the fact that a mail-in ballot case, that the Supreme Court, came out on the right side of history in a mail-in ballot case in a 5-4 decision, that's not the incredible win that we need it to be, right? It's good, but I don't feel like celebrating this, right? I don't. And again, maybe people will argue that I should. You got to celebrate all the wins, even the ones that are just making the losses less bad. But this is not. I don't feel celebratory about this. I feel relieved. I feel embarrassed for the country again. I feel angry that we even have to do this, and that the Supreme Court even took on this case, right? I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. It's laughably ridiculous, except it's not funny, right? And What this case specifically is about, if we would have lost this case on its merits, right, on just what the case was about, it would not have afforded Republicans the opportunity to steal the elections in 2026. It wouldn't have afforded them the ability to steal the elections in 2028. I don't think it would have afforded them to steal the elections until 28, 29, 30, 31, maybe 2032, right? Maybe when we start having close elections again. Because I don't think 2028 is going to be close either. Because the idiot will still have been in office for another 2 years. And people will be just appalled beyond comprehension at what this idiot has done. But this case really, what this case was about was states like Texas and California. I'm not sure about New York, right? But Texas and California have laws, and I'm sure there's a few. I think there's like 11 states or something. They have laws that say if you get your ballot in the mail by election day, then it must be counted. I don't remember if it's like it must be counted within 2 weeks or something like that, but there is extra time after election day to count a vote. As long as it's postmarked by election day, it counts. And the idiots and Republicans were trying to make the argument that election day is not election week. And that, to try, again, the goal is to try to stop as many people from voting as possible. Now, the idiot himself votes by mail, which is hysterical with his hatred of mail-in voting. And then on top of that, there are a lot of Republicans that rely on this too. So in terms of its actual usefulness, right? On the one hand, it's such a small number of votes. Yeah, you can. You can. My son was just asking me about his shows, if he could watch more TV. It's such a small number of votes on one hand that unless it's an extremely close election, unless the midterms were going to be really close, and I mean, they might be in some ruby red districts where like a Democrat, wins or, is just losing by a hair, right? And I think in those places it'll matter, right? But I don't think it's going to matter anywhere else when it comes to the 2026 midterms. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but I just don't think. I think it's going to be a blowout, an epic blowout across the board for Democrats. But when you look at the macro, not the micro, it's such a small number of votes with people that mail their ballots in on election day at the last minute that I don't think it would have any tangible effect. So in terms of the practicality of it, I don't think it would have mattered. But I think if the idiot would have won this, then because they're children, they're corrupted children who don't, the Republicans across the board, Republicans, Donald Trump, supposed fake Republicans that surround him in the Oval Office, chicken shit GOP senators and crazy and pretend crazy GOP members of the House, MAGA people, a lot of the people who may not be MAGA but just continue to vote Republican because mommy and daddy did, and they can't go against what mommy and daddy did 30 years ago. They're children, and they operate like angry, like children 6, 7, 8 year olds. They have to win. They're in the win phase. And even in my son's age, in the 11-year-old group, I see with a lot of his friends, there's this like, you got to win, you got to win, you got to win. And we expect that from children because they don't know any better, right? Or they haven't, their minds haven't evolved to the point where they understand the context of losing and, not taking losing very seriously. And there's a lot of peer pressure involved. And there's, your social status within your small community as a child if you lose. But these adult children who are Republicans today, right across the board, they have to win. And even if they cheat, because they're like children who are, who aren't taught or who were never taught right from wrong, or who have chosen to just forget about the difference between right and wrong, right? Because they are adult children of that magnitude, they would take something like this. Like if Trump would have won this case, they would take something like this, and even though the case just refers to mail-in ballots that are mailed on the day of the election, they would cheat, right? They would take it and say, well, the Supreme Court said this, but that actually means, it doesn't mean that it's just referring to mail-in ballots on the day of the election. On election day, it also refers to mail-in ballots that were postmarked 24 hours before the election, right? It refers to mail-in ballots, overseas ballots that that might have been mailed in time, but got caught up in the international mailing system. They would have found all of these pretend loopholes, and then the childlike grown-up lawyers who associate with them, or who are just in it for the $400, $500, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 an hour consulting fees these lawyers charge, would have found legal excuses for that sort of behavior. So I feel like the importance of this decision isn't in the practicality of the decision itself. It matters. Nobody should have their vote. It's unconstitutional, anti-American, and defies the right of citizenship to have your vote denied. Full stop. But in terms of the practical application, this decision allows for all mail-in ballots in those states that choose to count them to continue to count them. And that's certainly going to help. I expect in Texas you're going to see a blowout from James Tallarico over Ken Paxton in the Senate race. And, not being able to stifle mail-in ballots on election day is only because Texas is one of the states that has this law, is only going to further help Tallarico, in my opinion, blow out this election. Now, everyone else is saying that it's going to be a close race. I just think they're all wrong. I think they're just hedging on the side and a lot of people I know very well think I'm insane, but I think people are just hedging, erring on the side of caution because they are just too afraid of being caught with egg on their face if they're wrong. I'm happy to have egg on my face as long as Democrats win one way or the other. But I'm also happy to put myself out there and say all the data points to, all the election results point to a full-on blowout. And I expect to see it in Texas too. We're going to see Texas red, at least one half of the Texas Senate at this point. Ted Cruz should be getting nervous about his reelection in whenever, but that's another story for another day. So what I feel like this ruling does that is reason to, again, not celebrate because we should never have been here. But the reason I feel like I can take a deep exhale is I think it stifles the Republican efforts, the idiot's effort. It takes one of the things off the table that the idiot was going to try to use to cheat in 2026, which was to completely fuck up mail-in ballots. Now, I know there's this whole shenanigan going on with the U.S. Postal Service, and I don't remember. I'm going to have to kind of catch myself up on it because I haven't been paying attention to it for a while, so I don't remember exactly what it is. But there's some kind of shit where the Postal Service may break the law in certain states and not deliver mail-in ballots in a timely manner or something like that. But I have to look it up. So there's those shenanigans going on. But with the exception of that, I think the mail-in ballot argument for the 2026 election, I think this puts that to bed for the most part. There's plenty of other ways the idiot's playing the cheat. Mark Wayne, dipshit, rage man Mullen. Mark Wayne, it's just a matter of time, by the way. They can't keep putting this motherfucker in, bringing him in for public hearings because he's got his stress ball that he's got to squeeze. You could tell he just wants to go and beat the shit out of the Democrats whenever they question him, and they push. Many of them have been pushing him hard. If you've been following any of his the clips from that nutcase at the hearing, clearly he's got an serious anger management problem. Years ago, with Bernie Sanders in a in a Senate committee hearing, he tried to get up and start a fight with this guy's now his friend though, with a union boss. Mullen is a fucking whack job of epic proportions, and the reason I bring him up is he's clearly planning to send the ICE Gestapo dingbats to select polling places to try to intimidate voters. So we have that effort. There's a whole bunch of voter suppression. Obviously, we have the southern states who have redrawn their maps: Louisiana, Florida, Alabama. Georgia said no, they're not going to try to redraw their maps until 2028, thankfully. But we have that effort to, basically stop black voters from voting or to make their vote mean nothing. So there's plenty of efforts to, interfere with the 2026 election. And there's going to be efforts afterwards. You're going to see the court cases. They cheated. There's no way they could have won. We have the hottest economy in the world. Everybody voted for Republicans. That was me just making fun of Trump falling asleep. That may not have been that funny, but it was, he keeps falling asleep. So you get it. He's talking like that. I know Mitch McConnell. The idiot doesn't fall asleep while he's talking, unlike Mitch McConnell, if Mitch McConnell's still alive, what the fuck, right? Anybody from Kentucky out there? What's going on with Mitch McConnell? You got a Republican congressman who hasn't been seen in 3 months now, right? Tom Kaine's son, whatever the fuck. He's from here in New Jersey. I don't know. Is he alive? Who knows? You got Mitch McConnell now. It's been 2 weeks. Where's Mitch McConnell? Lacey, what do you got? I agree. Also, if they ruled any other way on mail-in ballots, I think the general public would really give the Supreme Court the side. I no doubt about it. They lose all credibility. They almost have lost all credibility. I couldn't have said it better myself, Lacey. Could the post office under Trump's control mess with the ballots, not postmark them? Are there safeguards there? I don't know. I mean, that's a great question, Lacey. There are safeguards. I'm sure there are laws and rules around it. But as I alluded to before, I don't have time now because I have to hit the briefing in a few minutes. I'll kind of look this up and get back to you on it. But there's been reporting over the last 2 weeks about some shit going on with the post office and with mail-in ballots. So I will. I'll have to get back to you about that. I don't think it's, for some reason I feel like it's a SCOTUS case, but let me just. What are the remaining SCOTUS cases? Hang on. Let's just take a quick look before we wrap it up. The birthright citizenship case. I guess it's coming out Wednesday. I mean, that's the biggest case left, I think. But let's see what's remaining. Because I don't think this post office thing is a SCOTUS case, but I'm not sure that it's not. I don't. Birthright citizenship, presidential firing powers. We had that today. There's the transgender athletes case coming. Mail-in ballots case is done. Agency authority case is done. So all we have left, I think, is birthright citizenship and transgender athletes. And let me just check something. Post office mail-in ballots. Let's see if I can just find this real fast for you. It's 2 days ago, okay? Postmaster General David Steiner stoked fears among Democrats and voting rights groups this week after confirming the U.S. Postal Service will no longer deliver mail ballots in states that refuse to provide sensitive voter data to the federal government. So Trump's administration's crackdown on mail-in voting becoming a point of contention ahead of the November elections. Critics have sounded the alarm on what they call the federal government's attempt to overstep its authority. Some courts have agreed. Federal judge on Thursday blocked the proposal from moving forward after a slate of Democratic-led states filed a lawsuit. Selena Stewart, chief executive officer of the League of Women Voters, said the Postmaster General's statements creates a credibility issue. So forth and so on. I knew there was something that came up, and if we think about why the post office exists, it exists to serve the public. Yeah, I don't think President Trump issued an executive order in March directing the agency to propose a rule requiring states to provide a list to the Postal Service of eligible voters at least 60 days before any federal elections, in line with the idiot's efforts to crack down on fraud. I don't see how, we have time, obviously. We have time between now and a little bit of time, to deal with this. I think... just because the Supreme Court session ends doesn't mean I can't imagine it doesn't mean that they can't come back in immediately on something important like this. So I don't even see the Supreme Court holding up this, upholding the Postmaster General's statement. I don't even see... even chicken shit GOP senators, for the most part, I don't really realistically see them. Not all of them, but I think there'll be enough pushback on this. I don't think it's going to be a thing, but I don't know. So, Lacey, I don't think other than that. I mean, who knows what they're going to try? But other than that, I don't think there's too much left for them to do, at least as it relates to 2026, about mail-in ballots. I think other than the idiot telling everybody that mail-in ballots are terrible, they're going to do it in California. It's going to be horrible. They're going to get rid of it. They're going to get rid of the election. You might as well not have an election. But even when he says that, anybody who's not crazy anyway at this point knows that he votes with mail-in ballots. So his credibility on that issue is over with. Take care, Aggie. Thank you. Thanks for being here. On that note, too, I better wrap the live, guys. So, as always, thank you for being here. Once again, I want to mention my apologies for the sporadic nature of the lives over the last few weeks. I fear it's going to be a little bit sporadic for a little while longer. I'm going to be restructuring my Substack completely, getting rid of the name Zenocracy. I'm approaching Substack. I know we've got some, folks on YouTube and Twitch, and this may not affect you, but the live, when I'm going to do my lives and how frequently is something that I really want to solidify. But I'm sort of, and I apologize. I respect your time, everyone, and I'm very, very sorry about, the uncertainty of the live times. But I'm restructuring the Substack completely. You're probably seeing a lot more Substack notes. I'm going to try to use notes to build the Substack community, to build subscriptions and then paid subscriptions. It's a different approach. I've been starting to do a little bit of practicing and getting ready for it by learning how to do it, but a little bit more long form video that you'll see on Substack and YouTube as well. And the live streams fit into this, but I don't know exactly how and how often. And I'm also in a cohort where I'm meeting other people and I'm learning about live streaming specifically. So, there may be other and more collaborations that I might be able to do. There's so much up in the air right now. And again, I apologize because it's been, I've been trying out a strategy and teasing it for 6 months, and it's been really good for Instagram and super good for Facebook, and pretty good for my verticals. But it hasn't been that great it was my whole plan that I put in place to build out the lives. It just didn't do all that great. So I apologize for that. And I appreciate you guys sticking with me through the lives. It's one of my favorite forms of content creation. But I just have to shift gears and find a way to do it a little bit more effectively. So I just wanted to kind of let you guys know about why they've been so sporadic. The times have been all over the place and the days have been all over the place. And I think it's going to be that way for a couple more weeks until I really get a good solid plan in. And then I'm going to implement that plan, and I'll have regular times and days, and I'll do my best to stick to them. Anyway, on that note, I love you guys. 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time. Thank you, Lacey. Thank you. I so appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, thank you, Lacey. Thank you, everybody, for being here. 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 live at a time. That was what I left out. I'll see you guys soon, okay? Have a good rest of the day, and look out for certainly verticals today on your favorite social media platforms. And I always might sneak a live in, in the evening or whenever I can get a break to do it. I'll see you soon, everybody. We're just going to kind of bounce out one platform at a time. So let's start with Twitch today. Twitch has left the building. YouTube, be well, everybody. You guys are out.